Excuse me. Oh my. Did I change the title? I did not. I meant to put booster in the title because I wanted to read a booster pack, and today they had a plethora. There were booster packs aplenty, but they were all the same. Now I'm glad that the whole Spider-Man Marvel thing is over because I don't know much about Spider-Man besides, Peter Parker. Um, so the booster pack is funny because I got two booster packs actually, and a pack of Zyrtex for my allergies, and they were both this green color. And the booster packs now, Secrets of Strixhaven with a mystical archive card in every pack. Interesting. So the back says, face your greatest test yet. The hallowed halls of Strixhaven welcome you back to school. Choose your college of magical study and expand your education in the greater world of Arcadios. Uncover ancient battlefields, monstrous mires, and mind-bending architecture as you stand against the mysterious threats plaguing the plane. Master the new Oh, okay. Sorry. Master the new prepare mechanic to become a standout student and look out for a fan favorite mystical archive spell in every booster. Cool. So, Secrets of Strixhaven. Apparently, we're going to magic school now, which, technically, according to the whatever, is on brand. It's on theme, right? With the whole alchemy versus magic, getting into the thing of magic, the successes of the last time to now being in magic school. So I'm going to open these up and we're just going to pull one by one and see what happens. Right? Maybe. Can I open it? There we go. And it's all this green. Who this? An artist of some kind? She's giving the creator in the archetypes because of the paint. But I don't know. All right, let's go for it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's go. Let's go. I'm a little tired, but I'm sure I'll wake up. I feel like I've been tired. I went. I got some exercise and I ain't been the same. Okay, so we have a token creature at the bottom of the deck, and it's a pest, which is interesting. On one side, it's a pest. On the other, it's a fractal. So the pest, you gain 1 life whenever this token attacks. And then on the other side is this fractal. Okay. What's interesting, or what immediately stands out to me with this fractal card is she's giving that Ouroboros type energy, but it's not biting its own tail. Right? It's like spiraling outward. It's fractaling outward rather than it biting its own tail and just sort of, I don't know, spinning. I also have this like cherry lavender lemonade. It tastes decent. This video isn't sponsored by Seven Brew, but the cup says cultivate kindness. All right, all right, all right. I need to wake up. Wake up. All right, so the first card, we had that pest. Every time the creature attacks, you gain a life. Add the fractal. Excuse me. First card is shiny. It's a holographic island. You see that? The first thing I notice about this island is that whirlpool. And I noticed that because of the fractal. So it's almost just like water dragon type energy. See, there's the fractal, there's the whirlpool, which is interesting because I've been using the Lafruma runes lately, right? The whirlpool in the Fruma is stankness. Stankness, not stankness, sorry. The whirlpool in the Fruma is swelgeness. And there's a lot of connotation, at least, with swelgeness about the past. And yesterday we saw upon his well daughter, Dorsha, that kept someone immobilized while she looked into the past. And I was thinking about it after. I didn't piece it together during that reading why um whatever that last card was, number 55, felt so like tricky. And the whole like if you unnecessary criticism and stuff like that. And it's also because of upon his well daughter, where sometimes constructive criticism and things of that nature are like that's what really gets us to move beyond certain blockages because of the things that we're blind to, the riddles that we can't solve or whatever, the things that we plug our ears to that we can't hear, that we refuse to hear, or truths that we're not being told. And because we're not told certain truths, we stay stuck. Cool. And then I immediately went on Instagram and found the video and put it in the community board. Uh, I don't know if it's relevant at all. Was it World of Warcraft cards? Or was it something else? I remember like the Maelstrom came out a long time, like years ago. And I almost want to say it was connected to the Dungeons and Dragons tarot, but I think it would have been more World of Warcraft. Did I have a book? Was it like a Burning Crusades book or something? And I opened up the book and it was on the Maelstrom. We have the shiny land. Cool. All right. Next card is another holographic. Whoa, back to back. Melancholic Poet. It's an elf bard creature repartee. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets a creature, each opponent loses one life and you gain one life. We celebrate our sadness because it reminds us of the true value of being alive. So apparently that's the thread that we're on this time, which, you know, I didn't say it. I was thinking it. I'm glad I didn't say it. I was going to be like, let's see if this booster pack will give us a departure, from so far, not necessarily. And again, it sort of plays into that energy of not being able to move beyond certain things versus sort of being able to move beyond certain things. Like, excuse me, that immunity to Dorsha upon his wild daughter. That whoever had yesterday. Because now instead of losing a life due to the effects of this melancholic poet, you can actually gain a life. We celebrate our sadness because it reminds us of the true value of being alive. You see how shiny it is? Two of them back to back. Whoa. It looks flatter here. There you go. I was like, from a certain angle, it looks flat. Also, he's reading a book. Or holding a book, reading something. It was the Seven of Swords and another card, the Seven of Air and another card in the Dreams of Gaia Tarot. Was it Knowledge? Because I was talking about how the Seven of Swords, specifically in the, excuse me, Wild Unknown Tarot is my card of birthright, right? And then at the cut, I'm sure, in the Dreams of Gaia Tarot, we saw the Seven of Air with the closed book, and on the other card was a person reading that book. And that sticks out to me. I feel like maybe the cards are always this kind of like, I don't know, they feel a little different. Like matte. I mean, they're always matte, I'm sure. I mean, it's not given that one song, Pain Without Love, because I'd rather feel pain than feel nothing at all. Pain. Sorry. Where are we going? Okay. Next card is, ooh, we got a full art card. Is that what they call these? Or an alt art? Locust Spray. Target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn, cycling a death mana. So if you discard this for one dark mana, swamp mana, you can discard this card to draw a card. A suit of armor is only as good as it seems. Vanity Lost, a knight's folly. Apparently, this pack is full of full arts and foils. See the -1/-1 on this. It could take the bite, and it's funny that it's a pest. It could take the bite out of the pest, but the condition for gaining life isn't dealing damage. The condition for gaining life is attacking. Whenever this token attacks, you gain life. And so now it feels like things are kind of starting to come into play. Also, a suit of armor is only as good as it seems. It's like literally, it just, can I make it be something else? Sure. But that's like literally that Ten of Swords energy that we were looking for. Coming off of Frigg, right? In the Norse divination deck, Idrisil Norse divination cards deck, oracle cards, because of Dari, that talked about past conflicts or conflicts that are coming to an end. And it's time to like put the weapons down and to take the armor off. And so because of that, I went looking for that very specific Ten of Swords in the vice versa tarot on the backside with the person out of the armor. Now, it is the card of the locust swarm, so it makes sense. And armor is only as good as it seems. So because the seams are the points where you attach one piece of the armor to another. So you could say that they're weak points in the armor, right? Especially if there are gaps in the seams or whatever. Locusts are fairly small, or it's given that energy, and it's a swarm of them. So it's almost like whatever entry point they can find, they take advantage of. Now, if the locusts are these pests, then you kind of have a problem. It depends. Because again, they give life when they attack, not when they deal damage. So even if they're powerless, as long as they're attacking, then whoever controls them is gaining life. With a whole swarm of them, then it's like you can gain life sort of significantly. And so it's almost morphing more into there are those who would sort of be immune to the effects of the locust, you could say, because their armor is impeccable. There are no gaps in the seams or whatever to take advantage of. So there's no attack on a person that can be made because the armor sort of protects them from that attack. And so there's not a whole bunch of life to be gained. And especially coming off of that melancholic poet. Um, it's like, again, that sort of that immunity where the melancholic poet would gain life because of the past and sorrow. And again, maybe if this was still in an Ouroboros shape and configuration, and it's, I guess it is funny because here it's like the past and sorrow is a tool for liberation. If you think about it, with Swelgeness being sort of related to the past and the melancholic poet being related to sorrow, instead of this whirlpool dragging somebody down and like them sinking into this whirlpool, it actually comes up and out of the water. So they actually ascend in this whirlpool. And I guess that's interesting just because of the image of like the tornado that's happening over the water, but it's not disturbing the surface of the water. But like we've already seen that sort of like gusty funnel energy above water. They actually ascend through that whirlpool. And the sorrow in the past gives them life. And it's not, it's because what they know, they are truly alive, the true value of being alive, right? And again, it's this fractal, almost water electric dragon energy rather than an Ouroboros. I don't know if that's like going to be the tone of the reading moving forward, or if it's kind of gonna not dip, but also the lavender isn't as, maybe it's like pinked the cherry. It doesn't look, the color IRL looks slightly different. Oh, I don't want to get condensation drop it on my laptop. And then the whole thing goes up in smoke. The lavender didn't make it as purple as I want. So if I get it again, I think I would do cherry lavender and like a blackberry, because I think the blackberry, like that deep sort of blue purple. I don't know. Anyway, interesting. The next card is joined researchers. Now, this is reading like a card in the Dungeons and Dragons Tarot. So we've had a lot of dark cards up till now. We started in the water with the island, right? And then we had the melancholic poet and that insect swarm. It's fine. I mean, I guess there is a tie because we talked about the Israelites wandering through the desert. Like the energy of that came up, right? And we saw in the Seven of Wands. Also, I realized it earlier, but I didn't realize it at the time yesterday. We've seen a lot of like people commanding lightning or people and lightning. First, we saw it in the King of Swords, the back of the King of Swords in the distance. And then we saw the tower. The lightning bolt from the King of Swords was striking the tower, and it wasn't the side of the tower and the vice versa tower. It wasn't the side of the tower with the eye of God, meaning that it's something that like King of Swords energy sort of initiated, right? And then before, when it was that energy of like the divine is like, last time it was a flood and there was a promise that the whole world wouldn't be flooded again. So maybe the divine can't show up in the way that it used to because it made promises that, the world won't be destroyed. And so, who else is going to step up? And I don't know. Anyway, that's why the divine is seeking those of powerful will and upright character and integrity and stuff like that, right? Potentially. But so we saw it there. Then we saw it in the Seven of Wands and the Tarot Apocalypsis. And then yesterday we saw it in the Ten of, was it the Ten of Wands or the Ten of Swords? I don't think it was the Ten of Swords. We saw it in the Runic Tarot too. The person and the lightning. So anyway, now we have this like basic mana, but I read it as like light. These joined researchers. Cute, love it. So it's a human cleric wizard combo. It has first strike at the beginning of each end step. If an opponent has more cards in hand than you, this creature becomes prepared. While it's prepared, you may cast a copy of its spell. Doing so unprepares it. So the spell is Secret Rendezvous, which is a sorcery. You and a target opponent each draw 3 cards. What's interesting about this is this glyph here. And I think that's the glyph for like this card set. So for the Secrets of Strixhaven, you see that right here? Because it reminds me of that cube that we see in the SKT. You see it in the Keeper. Actually, maybe not. Because I think that's an actual like Merkaba in the Keeper in the Revelations edition. You see it in the sky, excuse me, for a few of the cards in the majors. I think you do see it. You may see it in the moon, but I feel like we've seen it, right? That had to be a minute ago. At least 5 weeks, maybe. Because I'm pretty sure that's before I went to go visit family. Um, where we saw the cube in the sky. It may be in the Dynasty, Ten of Pentacles. I don't remember the exact cards, but we saw the cube in the sky with like little orbs at each intersection. And then we saw an orbs card, I'm sure. And then we saw the cube completed. Right? Now, oops, I almost knocked all these cards on the floor. This human cleric wizard, a cleric and a wizard. I wonder what class that would be. I could ask Gemini. I know. I just love asking Gemini questions. I feel like outside of this, I mean, anything I would like, hey Siri for, like, what's the weather or something like that. Outside of this, I don't necessarily talk to Gemini a whole bunch, if ever, really. Because, like, if you do a cleric plus a warrior would equal like a paladin. I mean, a cleric plus a wizard could be some kind of priest. I feel like I saw the word priestess, but I guess it's not here. I don't know where I would have seen the word priestess. As I like mentioned, cleric plus wizard would equal maybe something like a priest. I feel like I can see the word priestess written out. And I'm like, I think I read that. I don't know. Let's see. Hey, Google, if you would say that a paladin is something like a cleric plus a warrior, what would you say a cleric plus a wizard would?
Yes, that's a perfect summary. A
I
paladin
wasn't
blends the frontline
done.
combat of a warrior with the holy magic and healing of a cleric.
I'm not done. Okay.
Yes, that's a
Oh, no,
perfect.
don't read it again. Okay, so with that in mind, what would you call a cleric plus a wizard?
That combination is typically called a theurge or mystic theurge. In fantasy games, you might also see it referred to as a cleric slash mage, inquisitor, or priest of arcanum, depending on whether they lean more into divine laws or cosmic secrets.
Divine laws and cosmic secrets. The theurge? That blows my mind. You see that? The theurge. Do you know why that blows my mind? Because Google is the one that educated me on theurgic rights. Yeah, I remember the theurgic rights, and now we have a theurge plus that Okay, all right. I don't know, girl. I don't know what I don't know, but when it's consistent, hello. And it's interesting. It is interesting that it's a wizard, and I don't. I think that might be more of a Dungeons and Dragons delineator, and not necessarily a Magic the Gathering card delineator. Because I'm thinking about like wizards and sorcerers. I think sorcerers have something like innate within them. And it could be like a bloodline or a pact or some kind of blessing or something like that that makes their magic sort of innate. And a wizard is probably more of a like a knowledge, education, and technical ability or aptitude type thing. Right? Like wizardry is learned and sorcery is inherent. But I don't think we see the same because I was gonna say it's interesting. Like a wizard would be interesting. Well, I guess not. Rather than like something innate. Anyway, the fact that it's a theurge is crazy, especially because of the theurgic rights. But also, again, in this line of there's something that the divine is going to somebody about asking them to use their will to move things along because I don't know how many times has the divine had to promise not to do any wide scale destructing for reasons. Maybe Noah's Ark is the only one that, like, where anybody survived. So anyway, it's like that promise was there. Joined researchers. Interesting. But these are two, like, one is a cleric and one is a wizard. These two combined would make one theurge. And it's also interesting because there was the energy in the Dreams of Gaia Tarot. So maybe, I think I said yesterday. I don't think I went live yesterday. I was going to go live yesterday, but it didn't end up happening. Right? Did I go live yesterday? No, no. It may have been the day. It doesn't matter. Um, it's interesting because there was the energy with the journey. So was it love, journey, and whatever that other card was? Love, journey, and body slash mind. That was the trio. And it was like, and even with the energy before, with that Hector Five of Swords, and with when I went looking for the Destroyer, which is, I guess, the full title is the Destroyer of Obstacles. But, when you just say the Destroyer, you have like one sort of connotation in mind. It was like what would look like the divine or something divine moving was actually like the will of a person. Like in the body mind, it was like it may sort of, other people may see it as like this dragon moving or whatever, or it may take on the appearance of a dragon in that combined superposition rather than deletion type energy. And I mention that because, again, this cleric wizard combo would be something like a theurge, and the energy of theurgic rites came out a minute ago. And I feel like with the theurgic rites, it was the energy of like someone going to the divine and then the divine like moving, like invoking divine intervention, but something that was done like, if someone is like the divine is like, I owe you a favor, and then they're calling in that favor type energy. But and it's funny because obviously because of like Final Fantasy 14, I know about thaumaturgy. If you had to ask me what it means, I would not be able to tell you. I know it's a word, and they use it for like the mages and the spellcasters, that I think like elemental spellcasters. So like your fireball and your ice freeze and your lightning strike. I think it's like the black mages that are the thaumaturges. And that's just like in the game, that's offensive magic, elemental offensive magic. And then the white mages, they cure people. Like that's your heal, your cure, your raise. But also they do have maybe wind magic, maybe, and light magic, I think. Because there's holy, and I think holy is a damaging spell. Anyway, it's fine. Cool. I love that. I love that we have these joined researchers. Oh, and look at that. The joined researchers are a perfect opposite or a perfect antagonist to that melancholic poet, both in the power and toughness and in the mana cost to summon them, right? So one mana plus the dark mana, one mana plus the base mana, and they both have 2, 2, 2, and 2. Now with that locust swarm, it can reduce the power and toughness by 1 for 1 turn. Okay. Excuse me. Cool. I kind of like that. Anyway, next card in the booster pack, we have Teacher's Pest, which is a skeleton pest. So this creature can't be blocked except by 2 or more creatures. It does have menace. Whenever this creature attacks, you gain 1 life. And for basically the cost of the card, you can return this from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Stop playing dead, Renata. No one's believed you for a decade. Museo, Dean of the Vein. Stop playing dead. No one's believed you for a decade. There's this skeleton pest. If it'll focus, then it won't focus. I guess the vein. I mean, it's a school. Oh, look, it's focused now. There you go. Stop playing dead. No one's believed you for a decade. Instead of teacher's pet or teacher's pets, it's teacher's pest. What's up with all these pests? I mean, I guess that's not surprising. I can't wait to see what's in the other booster pack. I haven't even finished this one. I feel like usually they kind of follow a theme a little bit, but it's fine. Let's be where we are. So obviously, they steal life, right? Whenever this creature attacks, you gain one life, and this creature deals one damage. Now, because that's how it's written, if it's more, it's like no matter where, no matter how powerful these pests are, they always grant one life. So rather, they're like five, they have a power of five. They would still only grant one life. If they have a power of zero, as long as they attack, they would still grant one life. And there's something, it's like there's something about the intention behind a thing when you have that kind of energy, right? Like if something is happening or if something is going down and it's like if someone knows that something is going to be ineffective, then it's like, well, what was the point of doing it? Right. So, for example, low hanging fruit, let's say that someone is like, do I want to use that metaphor? Let's do a different one, slightly different. Excuse me. Let's say that the time has come for promotions, right? And someone really wants a promotion and they feel like someone else is in line for that promotion and they don't want that other person to have the promotion. And let's say it is on a schedule, right? So maybe like um, twice a year at the beginning of the year and at the midpoint, that's the opportunities for promotion, right? So let's again, like, you know, that the window for promotion is coming up. Someone else is like a shoe in for the promotion and a person doesn't want them to get it. So what they'll do is they'll start to like raise a lot of false flags or they'll start to like question a lot of stuff or do whatever. And it's like, you know, like ultimately the person who was in line for the promotion, like they're in line for the promotion not because of nepotism or favoritism, but because of their work ethic. And so it's like everybody knows that the person that's a shoe in for that promotion is like integrity, authenticity, everything like that. And so, like all these false flags, it's like, what's the point when like no one's going to believe you? Well, the point is, even if the claims are false, because it's promotion season and there are like all of these flags coming up now, it discourages that person from being promoted until maybe the next season or whatever. And maybe in that time, the person could quit or the other person could try to do something to move up the ladder. It's one of those, and it's almost like that. Like if you know that something isn't going to go through, or if you know that something is just going to fall flat, what's the point of even raising it as a concern? It's like there has to be some kind of play in mind. And the play here is with these pests and with that melancholic poet, the person in control gains life just for attacking. The damage that they deal is negligible. It'll add up in a swarm, yes, but alone, the damage that they deal is negligible. And so, excuse me, it's like there has to be a bigger play. And the bigger play is, again, that they gain life. And so, talking about this melancholic poet and sadness mixed with that swelginous whirlpool of the past, really hinted at by Upon His Wild Daughter. Um, I don't know. I feel like there's a question that's sort of raised almost. Excuse me. Next, we have Ennis, the debate moderator, who is a legendary human cleric. So we get our first legendary creature on the table, and it's a human cleric. When Ennis enters, exile up to one other target creature you control. Return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. At the beginning of your end step, if one or more cards were put into exile this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Ennis. Here's Ennis, the debate moderator. There you go. You see him with his wand, with the wand. What's interesting about Ennis is he can get a +1/+1 counter if cards were exiled to make him as powerful as the melancholic poet and joined researchers. But there's something about that, like it can exile a card to be returned to the battlefield later, especially for this to come out after that skeleton pest. That's like, stop pretending that you're dead. It hasn't been working for at least a decade now. And maybe on like a psyche type level. Excuse me. I almost feel like I'm yawning more than I'm actually tired. But if I wait a second, I am actually kind of tired. Um, because it's almost this energy of like, especially when things come up from the past, it feels like there can be this thought or this feeling that it's maybe instead of a thought or a feeling in general, and I could always be wrong, obviously. Take it as it resonates. If it resonates, if it don't resonate, don't take it. Right? Here's another way. Excuse me. It feels like when things come up from the past, or when things just like pop up, especially things that we don't want or like or whatever, it's almost like there's no, I don't know if there's any consideration for the return of other things as well, right? Like if there was an issue that happened, and it's very like, let's say, whatever, pick a story coded, um, of like something, it couldn't or wasn't defeated, so it's been banished, exiled, sealed, whatever. But the seal breaks after enough time. But at the same time that like the big bad comes back, there's a hero that is reborn, reincarnated, or a hero that comes back, or there's a power that is also left to combat that, right? And so it's almost like just as whatever energy was doing their Terminator, I'll be back moment, so too was like its antithesis in a way. If things haven't progressed to the point where it's not as much of a problem anymore. Because it also brings to mind another show. There was an enemy that they couldn't defeat and they sealed it away for like 1,000 years. Well, it could have been 100. I think 1,000 is a bit extreme. They sealed it for like 100 years. And 100 years later, it's like the hero had died. And you're like, oh my gosh, like, but knowledge and subsequently like power and ability had progressed in that 100 years. So what was like more powerful than their ability to really handle or deal with in the past was now easy. And it was like, oh, like this is that terrible power that almost caused the whole nation to crumble and fall into darkness and despair a century ago. Like that's it. It's almost like if you were to watch a horror movie from like 100 years ago. I'm like, as I'm trying to think of like, were there horror movies in the 1920s? If you watch a horror movie from like 50 years ago, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, it's like with some of the effects and stuff like that, it's just like not scary anymore. Because of Ennis, though, excuse me, because of Ennis specifically, it is giving a like, just as one thing has been dormant or whatever, so too has its like solution, or so too has the answer. Cool. Next, we have Encouraging Aviator, which is a bird wizard. Cue all the wizards, apparently. Well, clerics. We have our human cleric next to a bird wizard. We had a combination effort between a cleric and a wizard that gave that theurge. We have humans plus birds. If you put wings on a human, you could say, according to some things, you get something a little angelic. Anyway, this encouraging aviator has flying. Whenever this creature attacks, it becomes prepared. While it's prepared, you may cast a copy of its spell. Doing so unprepares it. This one has a spell of jump. Target creature gains flying until the end of turn. Until end of turn. And here's our bird wizard, the encouraging aviator. Love that we get encouragement. You can do this. Is that the extent? Is that the extent of the assistance that we are offered? The extent of the aid that is being provided is encouragement. Maybe, hey, sometimes a little bit of encouragement is all we need. Encouragement or a reminder. This one is actually the toughest card on the table. It's tied in power for at 2, but it has a toughness of 3. Now, the thing about that pest, the teacher's pest, is that it has menace. See, and again, the fact that that has menace it can only be blocked against by two creatures, and it has one power. Usually you could crush it easily. And I feel like that's another almost like trick. It's almost like you could say it's so elusive or so evasive, so intimidating that even though it's not that powerful and literally nearly anything could take it out, it requires, it's like you have to burn resources and manpower and time and effort and attention and everything just to handle it. And it's not even that, relatively as it is, and not sort of over time, it's not even that big of a threat. Right. Now, the thing about the aviator is when it comes to, I believe, and my knowledge of Magic the Gathering is very limited. Um, I honestly haven't made it much beyond just collecting cards and playing on the little app at one point until I got frustrated because I wasn't that great at it. And it was like hard. They pit you up against unfavorable matchups sometimes, it seems. But like that's the thing, I guess, with life in a way. It makes me think of so many mentors, teachers, guild members, elite adventurers from various stories, movies, anime, and the like, where it's like you need to be prepared for the fight that you don't want as much as you need to be prepared for the fight that you do. So if you never pit yourself up against like an opponent that you're not great against, or if you never put yourself in a situation where you're not naturally going to excel because of your previous experiences or natural talents or whatever, then you won't be prepared for the one time that things aren't going your way. And that's arguably what you should be the most prepared for, because that's when you'll be like at your most vulnerable or whatever. And so, to that point, seeing it as like a way to come up with like counter strategies or to use your strengths in a way to make up for some of your weaknesses, it's like I get it. Excuse me, but I didn't make it there. I don't even know if I got out of a tutorial, honestly. I think like, so when it comes to flying monsters, they can only be blocked by other flying monsters or by monsters with reach. But since we're in the element of water here, you can grant flying to any creature with this spell. And it makes me think of this whirlpool that takes someone into the sky. Encouraging aviator. And especially to see this encouraging aviator also, because again, the joined researchers was a cleric wizard combo. We have our human cleric and now our bird wizard. Um, it feels like that encouraging aviator can combat some of the effects of that melancholic poet, right? And so it's like you can feel that sadness, but still be elevated above it because, in some ways, it is a part of being alive and living, right? We'll be sad sometimes. Whew, excuse me. Okay, next card. We have Colossus of the Blood Age, which is an artifact creature, a construct. When this creature enters, it deals 3 damage to each opponent and you gain 3 life. This is it has 6 power and toughness. When this creature dies, discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards plus 1. and it's like this fire and light or fire and basic, but there's that saying that zeal without knowledge is like fire without light, but this has both fire and light. Three damage to each opponent. This could take out everything on the table. There's nothing else on the table right now that has more than three toughness. And that's just when it enters the field. It doesn't even have to attack yet. With this, I think because the effect triggers when it enters the field, you could exile this, right? So if you play this and it's on the field, then it's like Ennis can come in, the debate moderator could come in to reset this card so that it would reemerge and deal like three more. Plus, you would gain three more life. So you would have 6 life. It also grants the most life. And it's not a pest, but, you know, it is from bygone age or era. I think it being a relic from the Blood Age kind of also plays into that whole like if you could not use a construct from the Blood Age, then hopefully you don't have to rely on a construct from the Blood Age because it's from the Blood Age. And I don't know what the Blood Age is about, but it sounds bloody. And I feel like if you could avoid that, then it may be a desired sort of outcome or path, right? It almost gives the energy of that. Was it the Knight of Wands? No, it was like the Seven of Pentacles that came out with the Queen of Wands in that one reading where it was like someone was to establish a new kingdom in a new land rather than having like a bloody revolt to like not necessarily supposed to have a bloody revolt to get their own throne back, but maybe just supposed to build a new thriving nation in a new land. Because of the cost to get that throne back, would it even be like, would there be anything or anyone left to rule at the end of that? Or would it just clear the board of everything? Again, this creature is powerful enough to entirely clear the board, including the theurgic energy of the joint researchers. Now it says that it deals that damage to each opponent, but constructs aren't necessarily known for their discernment and judgment like their constructs. They don't necessarily have brains. So cue any sort of construct archetype that doesn't recognize an ally for whatever reason, or a construct that malfunctions, a construct that gets a virus or something. I don't know, a construct that gets hijacked. How many cards we got left? There are 6 left. Okay, let's do a new row. We have Page Loose Leaf. This is a legendary artifact construct creature, and it looks like, is that a butterfly or something? So if you tap it, you get to add a colorless mana, and it has Grandeur. Grandeur, discard another card named Page Loose Leaf. Reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal an instant or sorcery card. Put that card into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. There's the art for the card. So far we have the legendary human cleric, Ennis the debate moderator, and the legendary artifact creature Page Loose Leaf. What's interesting about Ennis the debate moderator, especially when paired with this Colossus of the Blood Age, and maybe because of Ennis's, like, it's almost like if there are two kids who get into like a really like dumb or stupid argument, or if there are two, again, it's like almost the energy of two kids that get into like a really dumb argument or like a destructive argument, and it's almost like it doesn't matter who's right and who's wrong. The parent takes the whatever away from both of them type energy, especially when it comes to that, like, maybe you should just clear the board. Right. Because sometimes some folks kind of don't care enough to, like, at some point it could be it doesn't matter who's right and who's wrong in this situation. Neither one of you know how to act, or neither one of you are deserving of this whatever. So just I'm gonna take it away until you two learn how to get along or whatever type energy. Because I'm like, what your solution or your go-to as the debate moderator is to just wipe the board completely and go, okay, now there's nothing for anybody to fight about. How about that? It's like, okay, sure. And it's, I think, especially if you decontextualize the children and a parent in that, and you recontextualize it to something like law, especially between, like, because let's say you have a large corporation and you have somebody else, right? It's like they're not in the same boat. So even if they both receive the same outcome, their resulting positions are going to be different. It's almost giving the energy of like a major corporation that can afford to pay the fines for copyright lawsuits or copyright violations, right? It's like if all they have to pay is $1 million to you for stealing your idea, but they can get billions off of it, they're gonna pay you your million and they're gonna make their billions. And I said, because again, it almost pulls me back to the energy of like all of these pests. Like they don't really do anything. So what's the point of like them doing whatever? And let's say that it's something that's like a little bit more absolute, right? Where it's like, once you get 5 marks on your account, then it closes or whatever. Then, like, whatever energy is behind this pest, it can afford to make a whole bunch of fraudulent claims. And even if it's proved, it's almost like one of those, it takes advantage of the system where even if you receive a false mark, since it's been made against you officially and it's gone through the system, like they can't remove it. And so, like, even if they're like denied or whatever, since they still appear, and because of the system, once you get 5 of them, you're iced out. Like, that's how they get you to not get that promotion within that metaphor. And again, it's like the claims are false. Everybody knows it. Like, it's like, what's the point of like all of this? The point was to get you to that 5, to ice you out, to make you ineligible. Not only ineligible for the promotion, but not even eligible for employment at that company anymore. Right. And then I don't know, maybe there are like there's a lawsuit that comes up and there are other things that come up, and maybe the corporate bigwigs, instead of coming in and like taking care of the problem, they just like shut down the whole place, or there's like this mass restructuring that they do, so like everybody's kind of screwed type energy. I don't know. Anyway, that loose leaf page, not only does it give you, I'm pretty sure that's a colorless mana, right? It could be anything, I think. Um, it lets you put an instant or sorcery into your hand. The next one available to you. You can reveal cards until then. And then what was revealed sort of gets put at the bottom. Iterative order. Excuse me. There's something about this though. I'm like, is this a butterfly? Because it was almost giving me like wings, right? So I'm like, is this giving me locust? Is this giving me butterfly? Is it giving moth? Ultimately, I'm like, I don't know. Grandeur. Interesting that it's called grandeur. All right. Next is Glorious Decay. Okay. So this is, well, I guess literally here's our instant card right after page loose leaf. So we would reveal one card and it would immediately go into the hand, right? And it's this card of Glorious Decay. You can destroy a target artifact, or Glorious Decay deals 4 damage to a target creature with flying, or you can exile a target card from a graveyard and draw a card. The only the only flying creature we have on the table is the Encouraging Aviator. And it has 3 toughness, so this card would instantly destroy it. Now, if they're working together, you wouldn't even need to. So, Colossus of the Blood Age has 6 power and 6 toughness, right? And so I'm like, well, technically, it's an artifact creature. So, Encouraging Aviator could give this Colossus of the Blood Age flying, a flying Colossus, imagine. And I was like, well, that would have 6, so that could withstand it, but it's an artifact creature. And it's like, as since it's an artifact, Glorious Decay could instantly destroy it. Now, because of the destructive potential and questionably discriminate nature, because I'm not going to say it's like indiscriminate, but I'll say it's questionably discriminate because Colossus be old and maybe some things have changed. What was an enemy at one point may now be an ally, you know? Um, I feel like the benefit of that Glorious Decay, it again, it almost plays into that promise of the divine to like not flood the earth again or have such like wide scale destruction. Because it, on one hand, it gives us the opportunity to actually like learn and grow. by like correcting our own mistakes or having a past to learn from or stuff like that. But in some cases, it could be like a double edged sword, right? And I almost wonder if, in a sort of space of relief at seeing that promise, if there wasn't a, I wouldn't think there was, especially to be 40 nights and 40 days just rain and everything is flooded. I feel like, by the end of that, you just be glad to reach dry land to get off that boat. And I feel like it's one of those, I never want to be on another arc ever again. So when it's promised, you're like, oh my gosh, because I would never want to be on an arc ever again for 40 days and 40 nights. But again, a promise is a promise, and it is maybe a sad energy that's like, well, what if it's necessary for some reason in the future? Like, what if we need that kind of intervention? And again, like when it comes to these pests and this underlying devil energy, again, it's like that energy that would take advantage of the system. Then it's a limitation of the system that even if there is a false flag, it still counts. So if you give somebody 5 false flags, they're out of there. And it happens automatically because of a system that maybe when the system was created, no one thought that that possibility would happen. Like 5 is a fairly high number of strikes when it comes to usually a 3 strike you're out policy. That's almost twice as many strikes. So if you get 1 or 2 false flags, like it's not going to affect things too much because you get those extra strikes. Who would conceive that somebody would get like 5, you know? So, yeah, there is like a potentially devious, nefarious energy to that glorious decay. But again, it feels like it also is a benefit because you don't necessarily want that Colossus of the Blood Age running amok. Now, I feel like this is where we introduce an interesting twist. Like, if we were watching this as a narrative story, this is where there's an interesting twist because although that glorious decay, because the glorious decay is instant, and to my understanding that means when you play it you have to use it, right? But it's almost like if Ennis, the debate moderator, could intervene before the Colossus of the Blood Age falls to decay, it could exile it for a turn, and then the next turn it would be back. And since the instant of that instantaneous glorious decay is already sort of gone, there would be no threat to it. It's like Ennis is this almost wild card piece. Again, if we were watching it, Ennis is this wild card piece that was meant to be like a defense or backup measure. Like, yes, it was promised that this would never happen again, but in the circumstance and where it's needed, then Ennis, the debate moderator, is there. And it's funny because we have that sort of energy of that's the cleric half of that wizard cleric combo. And I feel like it makes a lot of sense that, I mean, it could kind of go either way, honestly. But I feel like there is a certain vein where it makes a lot of sense, especially narratively here, for the power to bring about the destruction of everything is with the cleric, and not necessarily with the wizard. Um, in the narrative, again, like Innis is the sort of failsafe that, if needed, that Colossus could return. But again, maybe that devil energy, melancholic poet, maybe the melancholic poet could spin its hell. It's giving Yu Yu Hakusho. I haven't finished Yu Yu Hakusho, but it's giving Yu Yu Hakusho. Is it like Chapter Black or something like that? And it's like the worst things that humanity has done. It is the worst of the worst, and it breaks people. You don't watch Chapter Black and walk away feeling hopeful for humanity, because it doesn't show any of like the like life-saving advancements and various technologies and stuff like that. Like regardless of if you're in, it's fine, like the virtues and the triumphs of humanity, it doesn't show all that. It's only the evil and the atrocities and stuff like that. And so it's almost like that melancholic poet giving Chapter Black, or sitting Innis, the debate moderator, through that Chapter Black and going like, they are beyond saving, they're beyond anything. I think it's time to call in the Colossus. And after watching that, Innis would be like, yeah, I think you're right. And again, so it's that energy of like what was supposed to be like a safeguard or whatever, it can be taken advantage of. Now, in that case, it's not necessarily false flags, but it's also not a complete picture. And that leads to indiscriminate destruction. Where again, it's like it doesn't matter who started whatever. Where are we going with this? The next card is the Goblin Glasswright. And we got another 2/2. We have a Goblin Sorcerer. So there are sorcerers. There's a sorcerer right there. So you got sorcerers and wizards. Cool. This creature enters prepared. While it's prepared, you may cast a copy of its spell. Doing so unprepares it. Now, the goblin enters prepared. The joined researchers become prepared at the beginning of the end step, and the encouraging aviator is prepared whenever it attacks. But this one comes out prepared. So you can create a treasure token, which is an artifact that you can sacrifice to add 1 mana of any color. So a treasure goblin. Here's the Goblin Glasswright. You know what's interesting? Not interesting. I just had the thought, because the energy of the Israelites wandering the desert has been coming up lately. And it takes me back to, I think it was when the raccoon came out in the Wild Unknown Animal Spirits a long time ago. And that scripture of like, he will hide his face, like God will hide his face from whatever. And when I looked it up, in that string of scriptures, it was basically saying, and I can look it up again, that God knew that even before the law, God knew that even before the lost Israelites, which also plays into the whole thing with judgment, that even before the lost Israelites found promised land, he knew that when they got there, they were going to act up, and that they would become undeserving of it. And that's when he would go into hiding. but he let them go and make a mess of it. And so it's again, it reminds me of that judgment card, or it wasn't. It may have been Aries, the Ace of Souls, the Seven of Zones in Judgment, where they weren't denied access before they even did whatever. They were given the opportunity, and they proved um, um, they proved that you know there's a few different. Where was it? I guess Isaiah 59:2. But your iniquities have separated between you and your God, and your sins have hid his face from you, that he will not hear. I was like, you do anyway. It's fine. It was in there, and I was like, "Oop!" When I read that, I was like, "Oop!" And I feel like that sort of plays on that sort of ego, pride, doing too much, doing way too much. And it's funny because I literally just saw that clip of, I think it had to be Bruce Almighty, with Jim Carrey and Morgan Freeman as God. When maybe I'll put it on the community book post community board, when he was like, "Oh, don't you know, whatever," and Jim Carrey's character just kept doing whatever. How many fingers am I holding up? Seven. Like, aha. Yeah. Anyway, is that to do with this goblin glass, right? Not necessarily. I don't know why I wanted to mention that. Who knows? Now, this goblin glass, right? It can immediately. It's called craft with pride. Oh. So this goblin glass, right, literally creates the treasure. Craft with pride. It's a capital P. Capital P pride is a little wild. And not just because it's almost June. Um, but pride is one of the seven deadly sins. So maybe that's where we come from. Or that maybe that's where that energy came from, or that's where it's going with that whole like the things that could cause us to lose divine favor, even after we've gone through so much to get it, gain it, whatever. I almost wish I could put a card on here. I don't know if the next card will necessarily clarify it. Because I was going to say it literally creates a treasure. Now, could we ask Gemini why pride is one of the seven deadly sins? Because you have sloth, right? But you need to rest. You have gluttony, but if you don't eat, you'll die. It's like there's the thing and then there's the thing in excess. So with pride, there's a certain amount of ego that is healthy, but not in excess. Now, this is another 2 2. There are so many 2 2s on the table besides the Colossus of the Blood Age that is 6 6 that will just wipe everything out. Still, even if you weakened it with that Locust Swarm, it would be 5 5 and it would still wipe everything off the table. I think that's what the page does too. Okay, so the Goblin Sorcerer is a sorcerer. It can create a treasure that gives you 1 mana of any color. It's technically different from Page Loose Leaf, but the cost is the same. They both cost 2 mana. Here, one of them has to be fire. Because it's a sorcerer, again, with sorcerers, their magic is innate. It's not learned like with the wizard. Because the magic is innate, it's almost giving like maybe when the goblin glass right was younger, or maybe an ancestor of the goblin glass right came upon this loose leaf page, and you see like this ribbon that sort of keeps it closed. It's like they undid the ribbon and then they changed. Their physiology changed in some way that gave them the power to create these treasures rather than tapping this loose leaf to get that treasure. Now, it doesn't have all of the qualities of that loose leaf, but it has the one that makes it able to create that treasure. Then, digging into the energy of the goblin glass, right? I want to say globin gas. Oh, anyway, was that page given or was it like stolen, taken type energy? Right? Because it doesn't necessarily give that energy. So it's fine. We won't go there. But sometimes it comes out later. It is kind of sort of giving that Cassandra Apollo type energy. It isn't necessarily, but it's a question of just because it's given or gained doesn't mean it can't be counteracted. Right? Cassandra was given the gift of prophecy, but then she was cursed that no one would ever believe her because the gift couldn't be taken back once it was given. She had already been changed. Anyway, and then it's like I don't want to go looking for the seven of swords because that would imply that whatever. It is curiosity though. But so if we're talking about the Colossus of the Blood Age and the promise that was made, it almost, especially with this whole will thing, the divine asking someone to use their will to accomplish something, that mixed with or next to or in mind with the what we saw before, where the energy of the scorpion and the dragon came out, or the scorpion and the knight, right? The knight whose sword was forged in dragon flame. that had the power to destroy or remove the scorpion. If the scorpion was approached by a dragon, it would go into hiding or it would whatever. But it wasn't afraid of the night. And so when the night came, it kept doing its thing until it met that blade, until it was bitten by dragon steel. Then it was like, oh crap, if I had known that that sword was forged in dragon flame, I would have hightailed it out of here. It's almost like maybe, although certain promises were made, or at some point, like when the veil dropped and the divine grew more distant for whatever reason, or in whatever way we sort of believe it, right? That could be Adam and Eve leaving Eden, for example. It's almost like there are some gifts, maybe, that were implanted within people. And so, although the divine promised the things that it promised, or although certain things became harder to access, maybe with that veil, it's like the seeds of the means are still like they exist. Just like this goblin glass, right? That can produce treasures like the page loose leaf. Cool. So the next card is, I don't know if we've gotten our archive thing yet. The next card is Essence Scatter, which is another instant counter target creature spell. Venturing beyond campus means learning how to deal with creatures not bound by university rules. This is Emil, the Vastlands Roamer. You hear Chino out there. Essence Scatter. I love that. Venturing beyond campus means learning how to deal with creatures not bound by university rules. Because was that with the Colossus of the Blood Age? Where did that energy come out? Of being prepared for the fights that you don't want. Because you can learn in the university setting, right? You can learn in the university setting. You can learn in that hermity, sage, research lab, isolation type setting. But in the real world, things don't necessarily abide by what is nice and convenient and easy to understand, or what has already been sort of marked up and down or dissected by someone else for the sake of ease of observation and for the purposes of teaching. Maybe it was in that glorious decay where we saw that energy. But what I also find interesting about this is essence scatter, especially when talking about some of the gifts that were hidden within people, where it was just like scattered among folk. We got two cards left. Is this all the elements? I think so. Excuse me. I guess that's, this whole row is 2 mana. With the requirement of 1 earth, we get Glorious Decay. With the requirement of 1 fire, we get that Goblin Glass, right? With the requirement of 1 water, we get Essence Scatter. Vastlands Roamer. You must be prepared for the creatures beyond campus because they don't abide by university rules. Cool. Next card is another. Look at this. There was 2 mana in the loose leaf, right? 2 mana here. And this was the start of a new row. Page, loose leaf. Then you have 1 earth +1 and glorious decay. 1 fire +1 and the goblin glass right. 1 water +1 in essence scatter. And 1 basic or 1 light +1 in shattered acolyte. Now, oh, that's a creature spell. So does that count against locust form? I think technically it wouldn't, because creature spells are the ones that appear on the actual card, right? Like this. But I'm going to say that since locusts are creatures, essence scatter could also scatter the locust form. So with all this energy, and again, the locusts were the primary means of like raising all of those false flags. So then there's a further question of why would essence swarm be a countermeasure? Well, it's if a gift is, it's almost like blending into a crowd, right? If it's hidden among a mass of people or taken up by multitudes of people, then you wouldn't know which one specifically to target. Like you don't have somebody like an Ennis, where it's like if you take out Ennis, then Ennis on the board is the only thing that can exile the Colossus to return at a future point in time. Right? Because you got this skeleton pest or this teacher's pest that's playing dead, and the one sort of energy on the board that can match the Colossus's timing to that. Ennis is a target. But with this disseminated, dispersed gift, with all of these pages torn out of a book, because this is a loose leaf page, right? You can see that the book is empty. It's like all the pages have been torn out. Like, right, that would be a full book. This one's empty. The pages have been torn out. You get a loose leaf. You don't know who has what information. So maybe you just indiscriminately attack anything and everything. Dredge up that melancholy and make everybody, well, first you make everybody miserable and then you dredge up that melancholy and hope that it gets as many pieces off the board as possible. So this is a dwarf warlock that has lifelink. You can sacrifice this to destroy a target artifact or enchantment. Again, it's 2 power, 2 toughness. Just because Extus is gone doesn't mean the rest of us disappeared. We are here and we are still seeking answers. I don't know what Extus is. And it's so interesting that this warlock isn't a shadow creature, right? Usually a warlock would be dark elemented because they summon like demons and stuff, use infernal powers. But this one is of the light. I don't want to say the redeemer of angels fallen. But I feel like the inner tactician is like, I don't know. It could give that energy. And the Redeemer of Angels Fallen, right? Like there was a whole rebellion and everything, right? But it's almost like you had a few that were like implanted as like spies or whatever to keep an eye on stuff and to keep tabs and to secretly report back to the heavens. on demonic activity or whatever. And it's almost like it's a point in time where they reveal that they haven't lost all of their sense, or they haven't fallen into the ideology that was like the spearhead of that rebellion. And even the flavor text, just because Exodus is gone doesn't mean we've disappeared. We're here and we are still seeking answers. That immediately after that essence scatter. Interesting. So in our corporate metaphor, this would be someone being pulled into the office and they're having the talk, right? They're having the talk where they have five strikes. And unfortunate, like as unfortunate as it is, because it's in the system, they have to abide by the system. And so the person is let go, even though everybody knows that they were falsely reported for whatever. And maybe it's this like sneaky undercover type, like they're like, hey, so like we know that the system is at fault, but this instance has brought some things to our awareness and our attention. Depending on who the shady, seedy party is, it can open up further investigation, or with the, because it's almost like if that tactic or ploy had been used against anybody else, it could have flown under the radar, but it's because it was just used to target the person that was a shoe-in for the promotion by ethic, by merit, and not by anything else. Everybody knows that that person, they know who that person is. So if they're getting the boot because they, it's like, because that person is on the losing side of whatever system, they know that the system is corrupt. They know that the system is flawed deeply. And they also know that someone else knows that is taking advantage of it. If it's because again, it's that energy. Like if it were anybody else, it wouldn't have been as apparent or obvious. But it's like you look into the person and you're like, they don't have a single legitimate strike. And this is how and maybe it's one of those like how many people before this person were wrongfully terminated because of the system, or how many other people have we lost because they were in the crosshairs of this whatever person. And so it's like the person gets like maybe they go on paid leave for a few months while they sort out the system, but they tell them not to tell anybody, so that the person pulling the strings, the locust master, I don't know, the plague bringer, at this point the plague bringer, so they think they got away with it, but there's like this deep investigation that's going on. It's almost that kind of energy. And then when the time comes, then that person comes back in. Maybe, okay, in the drama of it all, right? So the plague bringer has gotten the person fired through those five false flags, taking advantage of the system, right? And then 6 months later, 6 months of paid leave is kind of wild, but you are the other person is that valuable to they recognize, right? They're that valuable. They can give them 6 months of unpaid leave with the hope that in time they will return, right? Because they may decide to go somewhere else and take the money. But anyway, 6 months later, because it's bi-yearly, right? Twice a year, at the beginning of the year and at the mid-year. Um, so it comes time for the next round of promotions. And they're like, hey, tomorrow we're going to announce, who got the promotion, and we're going to have a whole celebration and everything, right? And the person, the plague bringer, is like, oh, I eliminated the competition, so it's going to be me. And they're getting all excited. Maybe they're like talking to their accomplices or just people. And the next day, they show up to like the meeting or whatever, and they're like, oh yeah, and maybe the whoever's in charge, they're like, yeah, now comes the time for us to announce who the new promoted person will be, and they're like adjusting their tie and like in their posture, getting ready to get up, and then in through the door walks the person, and they're like, what? Like, but like they don't even work here. They were fired. Blah 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 blah, causing a whole scene. Maybe they do that TV villain thing where they're like, I did this and I did that, and they should be gone, and then like that's the confession. Right. Maybe they don't. They honestly at that point they wouldn't need to confess because they already know what's up. And then there's just like, hey, yeah, actually, we would like to talk to you after this meeting, or maybe they call not right then and there. We know that you're the person that raised these false flags against that person to sabotage their promotion the last time. That is not a way that we conduct business, and blah 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 whatever. It's that like rug pull sort of moment. Right. It's the time to reveal the truth. I don't know. Anyway, we also have a good like we have humans and birds and dwarves and goblins. We actually there are no the only creature that repeats is the human, right? We have the elf bard, a human cleric wizard combo. Then we have a human cleric, a bird wizard construct creature, a goblin sorcerer, and a dwarf warlock. And I feel like that really speaks to like that essence scatter, the dissemination and dispersal of that information of all those pages. It's not just a bunch of elves or humans that get all the pages, and it's not just clerics that get all the pages. You got goblins and warlocks and dwarves and birds and wizards. It's anybody and everybody. Cool. The final card is the cheerful osteomancer, which is an orc warlock. So we have a dwarf warlock and an orc warlock. Now this is a dark warlock. How I feel like we would typically see a warlock. And then here is the light one or the base one. And so maybe that's like whatever this is in and of itself isn't as polarized as we may think. I mean, by and large, it could be, but there are exceptions at the very least. So this creature also enters prepared, and it has the sorcery of Raise Dead. Return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Why the cheerful osteomancer? That's creepy. That's creepy. That's big creepy vibes. It has 4, so it's the second most powerful card on the table. The only one outside of that, only second to that construct, ancient construct creature. Return a target creature from your graveyard to your hand. See, we have Raise Dead here, and then we have that Glorious Decay earlier. With Glorious Decay, it could instantly destroy this artifact creature. And if there's some kind of like grave digging, so Glorious Decay can instantly destroy this artifact creature. I would say not by itself, But if the cheerful osteomancer could somehow put that creature into a graveyard that it has access to, it could return it to someone's hand and then pay the cost to summon it again to wipe the board. One of these, it's the same card. Just as Glorious Decay could be used to destroy that Colossus of the Blood Age, it could also be used to exile it from the graveyard. And if it's exiled from the graveyard, then it can't be raised. It can't be raised from the graveyard if it's been exiled from the graveyard. I don't know. This was whatever this was. Which one of these was the thing? Was it this? Oh, I guess it just said, look out for a fan favorite mystical archive spell in every booster. Which one is the mystical archive spell? Was it the locust spray? Was that the mystical archive spell? I don't know. Excuse me. Cool. So we started with the whirlpool type thing, the fractal. And then we got into the melancholic poet and that locust swarm and stuff. We talked about this colossus and all of that. The encouraging aviator, the page, the goblin glass right, essence scatter, and then these. Now, the orc warlock is more powerful than the dwarf warlock, but they could destroy each other. Right. Because it's more powerful than the dwarf warlock, but it's not any tougher. And they're both 4-2. 4-2. They both have 2 toughness. So they would destroy each other. They would cancel each other out, even though the orc warlock is technically more powerful. Excuse me. And I feel like I only bring that up because, again, sort of in line with when we first saw the Colossus of the Blood Age, with that glorious decay, and how sometimes if something persists or if it goes away for a while and then it comes back, there may be a sort of initial despair because we're not necessarily also aware of the fact that just as the problem has persisted, so has the solution. And even if it's a smaller number or a smaller force, because again, with all of these pests and everything, and with this argument that's being sort of made against or about the state of mankind with that chapter black energy, as much as the scale is sort of being set on one side, it's almost like it's very not like Liam Neeson. I have a very specialized set of skills. I have a set of certain I don't know what he says. I got certain skills that makes me bad for people like you. Kind of sort of that energy. Um, but yeah, it's not. And again, there's this page here that the Goblin Glasswright has taken in to the point where it's sorcery. I think that's the one thing about sorcery versus wizardry that could be something of a disadvantage is because it is innate, there isn't necessarily a lot of knowledge around it, right? Like, I was watching a clip of somebody doing something. It was a clip. I didn't watch the movie. It was a clip from that Spider-Man movie, Across the Multiverse question mark, with the Tobey Maguire having the web, right? And I think the other two Spider-Man were like, "How do you do that?" And he was like, "I don't know." And they were like, "You don't know how you do that?" And he was like, "Yeah, it's like that's like asking me how do I breathe? You know, I just do it." It's almost that kind of energy. Like it's so inherent and it's so innate that somebody doesn't have to think about it whenever they engage that gift in whatever way, which is nice, but it's almost like there are certain things that understanding or more knowledge of it and behind it would give, it would help in some way, right? Like let's say you have the power of, I don't know, I want to say some kind of storm power. What was a power? There was this one show that I watched, oh, a long time ago. I'm pretty sure it was Needless. And there was a character, you think that character's power is one thing for like the whole show. But then you find out in the end that her power is, I don't remember if it was different, but it's like you only see her using one application of her power, one application of the phenomenon that her power allows her to interact with. She's only used it in one way, so you would think that her power is one thing. But it's almost like if to get to that point, she would like have to know her power. And she would have to know the environment well enough to know how to interact with it to produce certain results or a certain phenomenon, right? And I feel like, was that the essence scatter where it mentioned venturing beyond campus means learning how to deal with creatures not bound by university rules? Oh yeah, I just talked about that because I was like, my knowledge of Magic the Gathering is not complete because yeah, that's why. I was like, why did I mention that earlier? That was why. When it came to those flying creatures. Now the thing about the skeleton pest is, oh, it doesn't fly. Never mind. Never mind. Never mind. All right. Again, it's just that energy of like, I don't know. It goes back to if it were used on anyone else but the person it was used on, maybe somebody could have got away with it. But it's because of someone's not only their integrity, authenticity, and impeccable character, but also because of maybe their technical prowess and ability. It's not just that they're an upright person, but they also do like really good work. So it's like if it were anyone else but you, maybe we wouldn't have noticed. But this is unacceptable. We apologize on behalf of everybody in senior leadership who knows what you do for for this company. We apologize, and we want you to know that not only for you, because you're not the only person that's affected, but we do want you to know that we are seriously looking into this matter. There's going to be a system overhaul because it should not happen. Five false flags, especially raised with malicious intent, should not impair your ability to promote within the company, let alone be terminated. So we just want you to know that things are being taken care of. Type energy. I feel like if there's anything that really sticks out to me, it's that page and the goblin glass right. But for the sake of collective general, I don't think it's important, right? I almost wonder because before it came out with the energy of limitation, the goblin glass right can only produce treasures that give mana. It can only replicate that ability of the page, but it doesn't have any of the grandeur. And maybe again that just plays into the sorcery versus wizardry thing. Maybe if the goblin glass ray did a little bit of diving into its gift, it will discover that ability as well. I think that is one, you could say it's an advantage of the wizard over the sorcerer, but I feel like those pros and cons can go both ways. Because someone may have an innate feel of something that knowledge hasn't caught up to the point to be able to explain. And in that case, it would be something that the wizard would never do. That it's something that the wizard would never do because they view it as impossible, while the sorcerer does it as naturally as they breathe. And the sorcerer's like, wait, doesn't everybody? And the wizard is like, no. And we thought that nobody. Hello? And they're just like, oh, yeah, it's just like there. I don't know. Right. Okay, cool. Mhm. Pests and locusts and melancholy and sadness. For what? For why? And they get life. They grow stronger. Their vitality increases just through making the attack. Doesn't matter how ineffective it is. But we did see that that was it the fourth warlock? No. That had to be the other card. No, I'm like, who was it? Melancholic Poet is the last one. The one that it deals 3 damage to everybody and restores 3 life. Melancholic Poet is the last one out. With the essence scatter at the bottom of the deck. Counter target creature spell. Yeah, I feel like it's just, there are some things, but I feel like that's also been sort of a message coming out quite a bit lately of the things in the past that we have to face. There are some things that, may make us sad or whatever, but when we have the capacity through whatever healing and anything else, when we have the capacity to liberate ourselves from those traumas, maybe take advantage of it so that it's one less point for some kind of nefarious energy to pick at, or it's one less thing to get you stuck or to trip over or whatever, to the point where you can be restored by it rather than sort of falling apart. Even if it's just like, hey, like I'm not there in life anymore. And that fuels me to keep moving forward. Right? Type energy. So I hope you all have an amazing whatever whenever you see this. I hope you're acting alignments make all that you wish to experience your reality. I hope that whatever you need along your path, journey, what you find. I have one more booster pack. We'll see when I open it. Maybe I'll pull some cards sort of related to this before I open it. Maybe not. I mean, there are a few things I could look for, so maybe. Or maybe I'll just shuffle, right? Sometimes I look for stuff to kind of like see how, not how far off the mark I am. Not only that, because I feel like there have been times when like I have, it's like I was already sort of gathering momentum in one area or towards one conclusion, and then the card before and after will be like actually, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, you know, I don't know. Excuse me. I don't know. Anyway, I'll catch y'all later. Bye.